So thank you guys for joining us here tonight. I'm accompanied by Ryan Watson, one of our product knowledge specialists. Tonight is Q&A with AgriSpray. So I know a lot of you guys that are on this call are probably new to spray drones or interested in the industry. Just want to learn more about it. And maybe some of you actually have a spray drone or have just gotten into it and just have some questions. So we're going to do a kind of a two-part here. We will do a short presentation where I'll kind of talk a little bit about the spray drone industry in general. And then at the end, we'll open it up to what I hope will be a very informative Q&A session. So with our Q&A here, nothing is off limits. If you guys have any questions about anything about drones, about the spray drone industry, about agriculture in general, please feel free to ask that. Go ahead and put those questions in as we go in the chat or in the Q&A on your screen. You can type those in as we go. Ryan will try to answer some of those in the meantime, and then I will answer those verbally here at the end. And then at the end, we'll also open it up. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and ask them out loud. Okay, let's get started. It's just kind of a topic list. So we'll talk a bit about us as AgriSpray drones. We'll talk about spray drones. We'll look at some mapping and software, and then we'll do questions. So again, my name is Taylor Moreland. I'm the CEO here at AgriSpray Drones. I grew up on a farm in western Missouri, a dairy farm. I've been operating drones in agriculture since 2014. Started with the the Phantom 4 back then, and just doing some mapping and things like that. I actually now live in Butler, Missouri, back on the west side of the state on the farm, which is great. And in addition to AgriSpray Drones, my wife and I also run a nonprofit called Frog Mobility, where we help, we design mobility devices and help kids find mobility with them. So I always like to share this every time I have an audience, a captive audience, just like you. I like to share a bit about this in hopes that one of you might know a child that we can help. So this is just our Facebook page here, showing some of the devices that we make and some of the kids that we've sent them to. We have a couple of different devices, mobility device or a wheelchair type device, a small wheelchair type device. We call it GoBro for Go Brody, my son's name. And then a frog right there you see for the namesake for Frog Mobility, which is a crawling type device. So if you have any physical therapists in your family or know of anybody that we could help, please let us know. We send these all over the world and we do it free of charge if need be. Thanks, guys. Okay, so AgriSpray Drones, here's our team. Let's see, there's 21 of us full time, and so everybody from the sales side to the after sales side, marketing and support. This is our team here at AgriSpray Drones in our warehouse. There's a few more pictures of our warehouse and our training facility there on the left-hand side. There's Mac by the parts department. That's just some recent photos of our tech room there. Looks like we're there tearing apart a T30 in that picture, and then just our inventory on drones. So at AgriSpray Drones, our mission statement is empowering rural America. When I started this, it was all just about filling a supply-demand gap between aerial application demand and the supply of aerial application in the row crop industry, and drones seem to be a perfect fit for that. What it turned out to be was actually a huge opportunity for many people in rural America to start businesses, to hire individuals on the family farm, to increase revenue on the farm. These drones have supported thousands of jobs, created thousands of small businesses across the U.S. And that is something we're very proud to do here at AgriSpray Drones. And that is something that everybody on the team is extremely passionate about. So before we get into some of the things that spray drones do, it is important to talk a little bit about regulations. These are drones. They do fly in federal airspace. And so there are a few things that you need to operate spray drones legally. This is just three of kind of the main things you have to have. That's your 107, which every commercial pilot, drone pilot has to have a 107, 60-question test. It's pretty easy. And then because these are big spray drones, you need a 137 for aerial application to dispense pesticide, and then a 44807 to fly a drone that weighs over 55 pounds. These things here, these last two things, are exemptions, not necessarily licenses, so you have to petition for them. This is where it gets kind of like a foreign language. So that's why we have on staff here, we've got a compliance manager who actually does a lot of this for you. We work with third-party consultants as well. So we try to make this as simple as possible because we know it's not just about getting the equipment and going to work. There's a lot of things that have to happen to do that and do it correctly. And one of those is definitely regulation. So if you're interested in doing this, don't sweat it. We can help you through the process. All right, so we think about spray drones. A lot of you might be in the row crop industry, which is where majority of these drones are being used, mostly fungicide and row crop, but there are many, many other things that it can be used for. So we'll look at just kind of some of the main use cases right now on spray drones. Row crop is obviously the biggest one. That is the biggest agriculture industry here in the US. So when we think about row crop with spray drones, what exactly are we talking about? Well, we're not talking about these drones replacing what a ground rig might do or replacing what your John Deere sprayer might do. We're talking about these drones doing really what a crop duster or an aerial applicator would do. So low volume application, usually about 2 gallons per acre is what you're gonna be doing in row crop, and primarily using them for fungicide and insecticide. For a few reasons. A, because fungicide insecticide application is very common with air applicators, with airplanes, helicopters, and the supply of pilots is not meeting the demand there. So there's plenty of demand for that specific application. It is a late application, so crops usually tall when you're making that application. And of course, you can do wet field burn down as well. Not quite as common, but definitely a use case whenever your ground rig can't get into the field. And cover crop overseeding is increasing in popularity with these drones, just because it's kind of the first time that we've had a tool, a drone that can actually spread, a small platform that can actually spread seed in pretty precise areas and precise amounts, which is needed for some overseeding of cover crop. Then, of course, besides doing the same things that a crop duster can do, they are a bit more versatile in some applications. So we've seen a lot of adoption in areas that have small fields or areas that have fields that have a high degree of topography change, or for spot application as well. Here's just a couple of examples on a couple of different applications. So this is a fungicide application actually from a couple of years ago even, done with a T10, I believe this one was done. And the only thing this is here for is to illustrate that, does fungicide work with a drone? Well, the answer is yes, it does work with a drone. And it's no different than using a helicopter and airplane. It's the same method application as aerial application. A drone can just do things like this, which is a strip trial, which prior to drones hasn't been able to be done for, well, ever, unless you have a Tyvek suit and walk around with a backpack sprayer, which is never the ideal situation. This is another application here illustrating the effectiveness of drones with herbicide. So a background on this application, this was not actually intentional. A grower, one of our customers in the early days, wanted to apply Liberty with a drone because, because it had been raining for 2 weeks prior. He had weeds growing in a soybean field, had to spray Liberty on them. Wanted to do it with a drone. I said, well, first off, that's not on the label. Second off, it's probably not going to work because you have to have, the label says 20 gallons per acre. So he just did a few acres with the drone, and then it rained the day after. 9 days later, after it dried up, came back with his ground rig and did the rest of the field. This picture was taken a month after that ground rig application. Now, this is not to say that drones work better than ground rigs. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What this is showing is two things. This is showing that first, timing is incredibly important. Had the grower been able to use his ground rig the same day he used his drone, then we wouldn't have seen this big of a difference here. But because it was 9 days later, the weeds were taller, it was cloudy that day, it just did not work as well. So timing is incredibly important, and drones give you time. That's exactly what they do. They give you time in application season. Secondly, this shows that you don't need volume to achieve coverage. You know, with ground rigs, if you need better coverage, you increase the volume of water. That's because you don't have necessarily pressure and air pressure to push that down. With drones, we are using that prop wash to actually push product through the canopy, push the droplets through the canopy to achieve better coverage. As you can see here, the only weeds left standing are volunteer corn on the left side with the drone applied. Okay, so the kind of the second biggest growing use for drones, spray drones that we're seeing is pasture and forage production. And so I kind of relate this back to, you know, whenever I was a kid growing up on the farm, we had some beef cattle as well. And the reason that our pastures were pastures is because there was too many ditches, too many rocks, too many saplings, too many fence posts. And it just didn't make sense to turn it into a crop field. You just couldn't till it, or it was wasn't cost effective, and it was could damage equipment. So because drones fly, those things don't matter. And because group 4 herbicides, like pasture herbicides, work very well with ultra low volume application and are labeled for low volume application, drones are a perfect tool for a lot of different pasture applications of herbicide and brush control as well. And overseeding or interseeding clover is, you know, at low seeding rates with the drone. It's a perfect tool for that situation. Then here's just some examples of mostly the T30 here with some kind of special use case applications. So orchard application is something that we are constantly testing. You can do three-dimensional flight routes. That was software on that previous screen there showing how you can create 3D flight routes to actually pre-plan a mission on a hillside or a mountain over a forested area. You know, basically the sky's the limit. You know, if you can think about it, these drones can do it, and there's software to help you plan that out as well. So vineyard application, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, vineyards and orchards might be perfect application for these drones. Some that might be the case, but because air application hasn't really been done that much in vineyards and orchards, a lot of testing. As you can see, you can disturb the canopy with these drones, which does help increase penetration. Now, greenhouse painting, this is very interesting. We've done some of this ourselves with the T30 and the T40. And greenhouse painting, this is putting shade paint onto a greenhouse, a very niche application, but has high value in this industry. All right, we'll talk a little bit about kind of the basic operation of a spray drone. We won't get into the details here since it's pretty high level. But this is kind of the basic workflow of, you know, how a spray drone functions in the field. This is a T20 setup, so it's like the minimalist setup that you would have to run a spray drone operation. T20P, you could replace it here essentially, but a generator, charger, batteries, and then some type of way to handle chemical. Most people do use trailers, of course. So then, of course, you collect a field boundary. You can do this a number of ways. Simply put, if you can think about a way to collect a field boundary, you can do it with the DJI system. It is incredibly versatile. So you can fly the drone around the field. You can walk the remote around the field. You can just use the remote and satellite imagery. This is Google Maps background imagery. And you can create your map with just satellite imagery. You can bring in shape files. If you have shape files already from your John Deere system or Ag Leader or SMS or whatever, you can bring those shape files in. You can create your own shape files with a third-party system. And then you can use a mapping drone if you wanted to with DJI Smart Farm Cloud or your Pix4D. So like I said, any way that you can think about creating a boundary, a GPS boundary, you can do it. Then next, of course, you input your parameters. So your gallons per acre, and your flight speed and your height. Your pumps on these drones actually automatically figure out, you know, how much their dynamic flow. So they figure out how much they have to put out gallons per minute wise to achieve your target rate. And the radar on the drone keeps your height and does your terrain following for you. And all you do then, load the drone and then just slide the takeoff. Of course, there's a few parameters for different situations you kind of want to look at to see, you know, how you want the drone to return back to you, all that kind of stuff. Then after it's done spraying, or if the tank is empty, returns back home automatically, hovers at home, you press landing, and then it lands by itself. just like that. And then, of course, you're gonna have to refill the tank. It's a big question people have is, well, how can a 8-gallon, 10-gallon drone achieve 40 acres an hour or more at a 2-gallon rate? Well, it's with multiple tank refills. So about every 5, 6, 7 minutes, you are refilling the tank and replacing the battery. Usually every time. Sometimes you can get 2 flights per battery. With the T20P, you can get 3 or 4. But usually you replace that battery every time because it's better to start with a full battery than it is a half full battery. Then again, just slide the take off and it goes back to where it left off and continues the job from there. So essentially your job as an operator is not to fly the drone, it is to plan the field and then to refill the tank, swap the battery, and monitor. That's it. So if you're looking at drones, what drones exist right now? Well, there are several different brands of drones. We here at AgriSpray Drones, we focus on what we believe to be the easiest to use, most versatile, highly supported, and most reliable drones, and that has brought us to the DJI system. We constantly test drones that are on the market and constantly come back to the DJI system. And so the two right now that are available are the T20P and the T40. These are essentially identical drones. The same drone, one has half the motors and half the tank capacity. That is the T20P. It is 5.2 gallons. And there's the T40, 10.5 gallons. So we try to like to understand what your end use is, what your use case is, because a lot of people will just say, well, just get the biggest drone. That's the best for you. It's not always the case. And in fact, the T20P has proven very valuable and very efficient for its size. If you look at our last webinar, you'll see that. There's operators running T20P swarms achieving efficiency close to what a T40 is on a per drone basis. It does depend what your use case is, of course, though. All right, let's look briefly at software. So there's a bunch of different software out there. The one that we're most excited about right now, that's pretty new as far as its functionality with spray drones, is Pix4D. And the reason we're excited about it is because there's never been a software that works well with spray drone prescriptions or spot spraying, that's easy to edit, that's easy to use, that's quick, and that's versatile until now. That's Pix4D Fields. And there's actually a new update that it's not even on 2.4, they're on the next update now. But what does this look like? If you're looking at doing spot spraying with spray drones, well, you need data first. How do you know where to do your spot spraying at? And typically this is going to be imagery data. And so if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, that's kind of the workflow. So it starts with a mapping drone or a camera drone. So there on the screen, you're seeing the, well, I'll move that out of the way so you can see it. You can see the Mavic 3 multispectral, the 3M, and the Mavic 3 thermal, the 3T. And so both of these drones are pretty new to the market, are pretty revolutionary in terms of their specs and capabilities. So you take one of these drones, you map out the field. There's a very simple solution to this. Then you import that imagery into Pix4D. There are other softwares, of course. Pix4D has proven the most useful. And then with Pix4D, in the middle video there, short video, what you're seeing is what's called the magic tool being used, where you actually train the AI to identify what you want it to identify. So if that's a weed, then you can zoom into the imagery, you can select those weeds, you can select your crop as a not wanted attribute, and then it learns based on your input what you want it to find. Then you can edit that very easily, put in your own spray areas with different rates even. And then you can even put in obstacles. This is the revolutionary thing that Pix4D has done, is they've taken the prescription side, married it with the mapping side, where you can create the map, the boundary, and the obstacles all on the same software, and then import that right into the T20, the T20P, the T30. And it's a very, very fluid process. And it's the first software that I've ever actually been excited about. We've tested out a lot of different software. They've been so clunky that Pix4D is the first software I've been excited about for this use case, which is why we're actually, well, we're distributing it now because we are excited about it. So if you want to learn more about Pix4D, let us know. And then I guess I might while we're on this topic here, we're talking about the Mavic 3M, the Mavic 3T. I know there's a lot of questions about mapping drones, capabilities of them, what to get. I want to do crop scouting. What drone should I get? So Mavic 3M multispectral, that's heralded as being the perfect crop scouting drone, and it might be because it does combine a 20 megapixel 4/3 inch sensor, fast shutter speed camera, RGB camera for mapping with multispectral, four spectral sensors for crop health imagery. But with Pix4, like software like Pix4D or like Drone Deploy, there's some other softwares out there. You don't actually need multispectral imagery to get a crop health analysis or NDVI index. You can actually do that with RGB because really just looking at how green is my crop. Greener the crop, the more healthy. And if you compare multispectral NDVI analysis with RGB NDVI analysis and look at the map side by side, you'll find that the maps look very, very similar, meaning that multispectral in a row crop scenario might not be that useful, frankly. Now, in other scenarios, other crops, I know blueberries, for instance, there's a lot of work being done with blueberries multispectral to get very, very, very precise information about crop health. That's where it might be very useful as in a specialty crop scenario. We actually see, and encourage a lot of our customers to take a second look at the Mavic 3 Thermal because the Thermal has the same mapping camera, the same RGB camera, red, green, blue, RGB imagery, regular camera, has the same camera for mapping. So you can create just, what you're seeing on the screen, you can do that with the Mavic 3 Thermal. It's no different than the M3M. And then on top of that, if you also, let's say you have a livestock operation, the Thermal is fantastic for a livestock operation. And then you have a zoom camera on there as well. So on the farm, we've been 120 feet away from a cow, and we've read the number tag by zooming in on that cow's number tag. So really, really cool Mavic 3 Thermal that the M3M doesn't have that capability. M3M does have live NDVI, meaning you can be hovered over the crop field and you can switch to NDVI and it'll show you a live NDVI, a live crop health map, which is useful if you're an agronomist doing crop scouting. You don't want to wait on a report to be generated. You just want to know, fly it up 400 feet in the air, get a live image of the field and know where to go look. That's when multispectral comes into play. We even have guys using the M3T down in the southeast, where it gets really hot in the summer, to monitor irrigation equipment, monitor temperature of the crop, and if you're on the irrigator whenever it gets too hot. Guys want to do very specific management with where temperature can actually show you crop health. M3T can do that. All right, there's my soapbox on M3T and M3M. Okay, guys. I told you it was going to be short and sweet on the presentation because I know you have lots of questions. We want to answer all your questions. So I see a few that have popped up here in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the questions portion of this. And if you have more as I'm talking, please put those in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll get those answered.
I would start with the Q&A side where there's nothing in chat.
You got it. Oops, there we go. All right. Q&A side. All right, Seth asks, can the Mavic 3 pick up cheatgrass in winter wheat using green on green? Okay, well, by Mavic 3, I assume you mean Mavic 3 multispectral. And again, the multispectral probably won't do much for you there. I don't know if there's been any, the thing with multispectral is you have to rely on the software, not the drone, but the software to analyze the spectral cameras. So if there hasn't been a software that that has done that, or somebody develop a software that can do that specific use case, then the multispectral might not help you out much there. It's reliant mostly on the RGB imagery. So green on green. Well, I'm hoping it would be if you can't see a difference in the color, if it's the same green, no. But if it's different shades of green, then yes, the magic tool with Pix4D should be able to do that. As long as the pixels, the or your imagery is detailed enough to pick up those areas. The areas are big enough. You can do green on green, yes.
Sometimes flying lower to get those better resolution pictures is going to help. Now that will add
Exactly.
more pictures into your card, so it makes you a better size card. And it might take longer, but if you're willing to do that, you might get some better resolution off it.
You got it. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, simply put, flying lower increases resolution. As far as flying lower on a mapping drone increases
Yes,
resolution.
yes.
Resolution. But that also does take a lot more time too.
Yep.
So not just to fly it, but also to process the imagery.
Yep.
Okay, Asa asks, what is the best way to set up and spray a crop of arborvitae? Sorry, I did not get that. Approximately 3 feet tall, spaced in rows 5 feet on center. They are planted very close to each other in each row. The goal is to spray the cover crop with herbicide at the base. Okay. All right. Okay. A diagram might help here. 3 feet tall, spaced in rows 5 foot on center, and they're planted very close. The rows are very far apart. Gotcha. So you just want to apply just at the base of that plant, not at the top of the plant, I assume. Okay. Good question. You're going to have to modify the spray system. We've had people talk about putting drops onto the spray lances to drip it through the canopy. I would be leery about doing this just because it could possibly snag and then bye-bye drones. You might have to have some kind of breakaway system there. Asa, you might get back with us on this so we can talk about this in more detail. That would be good. But good question. Okay, Kyle says 60% of the fields I'll be spraying are under 60 acres and are in hilly terrain, but the other 40% are between 60 and 120-ish acres. Would you recommend the T40 or T20P? Flip a coin maybe on this situation. I don't know. And also depends how many acres you want to do. Because if that 60% is 4,000 acres, and the 40% obviously is, a little bit less than that. That's a lot of acres, and one T40 could cover that, but in what time frame? All right, do you have 3 weeks to do that? Well, you're probably going to want to get 2 drones, which in that situation, maybe getting one of each and splitting the crew in half. What we find is, yeah, you can run 2 drones in one field, but you need a fairly big field to make that worthwhile. With a fairly big field with good access to make that worthwhile, because you have a bigger trailer, you have a bigger setup, takes longer to set up. So big fields are basically the only way to make running multiple drones efficient. So if you have 60 acres and less, then running 1 drone is probably better off than splitting your other drone to do bigger fields. So yeah. What would I do? I would probably get a T20P if it was me. I like T20P. Let's and if you have a lot of under 60 acre fields, then yeah, it's gonna make sense. Okay, Todd says golf course question. 1, most chemicals used on golf courses are not labeled for air application. Are there agriculture equivalents for these products, or do you think the labels will eventually be changed to include air application? Second, how would you go about pricing golf course application? All right, Todd. I just talked with a company who is actually actively pursuing golf course application as like one of their big use cases for the drone. And they're doing a couple things. They're working mainly they're working with manufacturers to get labels changed for golf courses. How long will that take? I don't know. They're working on a row crop right now, so we'll see. Could be a year, could be 2. Are there agricultural equivalents of these products? Maybe. You have to go specific product by product. Yeah, there's agricultural equivalents of everything probably, but are they labeled for turf, use? If they're not, well, then maybe your aerial is on label, but your crop is off label with that product. So, secondly, how would you go about pricing a golf course application? Well, first off, you got to prove that it's worthwhile. Is there a specific application that the drone can do better than traditional golf course equipment? Possibly, but is that worth paying extra for the drone to do it? It's probably on a case by case, need by need basis. They might not want to use a drone for certain parts of the course, so they might not, because it's going to tear, they might not want to use traditional equipment for certain parts of the course because it's going to tear it up. In that case, the drone's worth a lot more. So we typically, for these jobs, these niche applications, we charge by the hour because you don't know how long you're going to be there. You got to map it specifically certain ways. It's going to take you longer to set up. So we usually just charge by the hour, anywhere from 400, 600 bucks an hour, or by the job too. Okay, Tim says, we have about 500 acres in production ornamental trees and shrubs. We have hundreds of varieties. I would like to fly a smaller DJI Mini to create orthomosaics of the fields for current imagery. Is there a way to upload these georeference images to the T40 controller so I can target individual varieties easily without using monthly cost software like Pix4D? Tim, absolutely there is. Now, and Pix4D might not even be the best software for you if you're, are in, ornamental. There's other software. I know that, let's see, we've used another one, Agremo, that does like potted plant counts and stuff. So that might be a good use case. Anyways, yes, so you can actually, so DJI Smart Farm Web, it's currently in, I guess what they call beta, but it's fully functioning, it works, and it's free right now. It will cost, but not that much. And with DJI Smart Farm Web, you can take your mapping drone, and I would get one with a good camera, so Mavic 3, Mavic 3M, Mavic 3T, and then you can hook it up to your Smart Farm Web account, which is your same DJI account, fly the field, map it, and then it will send the imagery to the cloud for cloud stitching, so you don't have to have a fancy computer or anything like that, or a computer at all, frankly. It'll send it to the cloud for stitching, and it'll automatically stitch that, and then you can download that imagery once it's done stitching to your T40 controller, and it'll overlay on top of the Google Maps satellite imagery. So then you could make your custom routes with that imagery. You can also do three-dimensional flight routes. You can do custom, flight routes. You can do target individual, areas, things like that. So yeah, DJI Smart Farm Web. If you want more info on any of this kind of stuff, just give us an email. Okay, Derek says, does any software give soil health info? Soil health info out of a mapping drone is going to be tough. You can, 3T can give you surface temperature. And of course, if there's differences in color, then you can get that. But you're gonna have to get your hands and your boots dirty to do some soil sampling if you want, good soil health info. I used to do a lot of grid soil sampling, and there's plenty of software out there for grid soil sampling. Find a good lab, find a good sampling equipment. Okay, your thoughts on using RTK as part of your ag spray business? Okay, so RTK. If you guys don't know what RTK is, it's a simply put very, very accurate and repeatable positioning. So GPS positioning. GPS, you're just using, with WAAS or GNSS, you're just using satellites up in space. It's free, and you have accuracy of, down to maybe 3 inches or maybe up to, a foot during application. Now, whenever you come back to that field next year, your boundary may have drifted because, again, you're relying on satellites in space, which are constantly moving at thousands of miles an hour. And so your boundary might be shifted over by 3 feet or maybe possibly more. And then you can have to just rectify that, pull it over, with kind of some offsets. Now, what RTK does is it puts one of those satellites on the ground, basically, in a known fixed location. So a base station in a known fixed location. And so using the satellites in the air and that RTK base station on the ground, and that is correcting is improving the triangulation essentially. And so there's two different types of RTK. You have with DJI, you have a base station you can get, the DRTK2 base station. Set it up in the field, and then it connects to the drone, the remote, and that's that. You're done. And then you also have you can also get cellular RTK network. So like a CORS network, or we're distributors for DigiFarm, which is a really, really good RTK, custom RTK network, cellular RTK network. Okay. So do we use RTK? No, we don't, for like 95% of everything. If we're out, if we're doing fungicide work on corn, there's no need to use RTK, because even if you're off by a foot at the most during the application, well, you've got overlap with these drones. You rely on overlap, so you don't need to be precise to the centimeter like you do with maybe a planter. Now, when do we use RTK? Well, we use RTK when we have to use RTK. So there's two scenarios that you need RTK with a spray drone, and that is for three-dimensional flight routes. So if you create a custom 3D flight route, either with DJI Smart Farm web software or with Terra software, like you guys saw earlier, then you need RTK for the spray drone to actually follow that pre-planned height. Second thing you need RTK for is the T20P and the T30. They both have the ability to do orthomosaic mapping, just like an M3M, M3T, any other mapping drone, just on a smaller scale with a bigger drone. But you need our RTK to do that orthomosaic mapping. Yeah. Long answer to a short question. Adam says, for an operation spraying right-of-ways, easements for utilities such as electrical or pipelines, what drone would you recommend? I spoke with another applicator who suggested the T10 due to not dealing with over 55-pound regulations, but I cannot find much about those drones. I have been leaning more towards T20P versus the T40. I just got to say, guys, I love the variety of use cases here. This is really cool. So thanks, keep them coming. And we've done right-of-way work here locally. And the most challenging thing with right-of-ways is you're constantly moving from one location to another, and you're constantly operating around, around power lines and trees and power poles. It's a lot of obstacles, meaning a lot of manual flight is necessary. So you need a drone that's easy to transport and easier to maneuver. Not so much worried about payload. So a T10 would work well. Problem with the T10 is, it's kind of being phased out. We can still get T10s. We just don't do a lot of them because it's not very highly demanded. And it does have a pretty small tank. So if you're doing a 3-gallon rate, that's less than, an acre per tank load. You'd probably be doing a 5-gallon rate with a lot of these products you got to mix up. T20P, the great thing about it is very maneuverable, has a very long flight time, and it's about as easy to transport as a T10, T20P is. But the downfall of the T20P is it is just as wide as the T40. It's the same width as the T40. So even though it's more maneuverable than the T40, if you're trying to squeeze between a power line and the edge of a tree line, it can get kind of tight. Now you can do it. You just got to be a good pilot and take off your obstacle avoidance and be brave. But yes, I would definitely go with T20P because it is much more versatile. I'm assuming you're not only doing right-of-ways, and so the T20P is a good fit for a lot of different things too. And a quick note on the over 55-pound exemption, that would be the 44807. If you are applying for a 137 and a 44807 at the same time, it's not really going to prolong the time it takes to get that exemption. So if you're just applying for 137 for under 55 pounds, it's not really going to take any less time than for both of them. Now, of course, you're not supposed to operate at night, but then again, you probably can't spray at night anyways. and you're supposed to have a person there with you. But if you're doing right-of-ways, you probably want somebody there with you anyways. Okay, Kyle asks, how does the DigiFarm cellular plans work, and is the coverage the same as cell service in the area? I don't have the best cellular reception in my area, and wondering if the RTK base station is better route for me. Thank you. Okay, Kyle. So I would hop on. Just go to search for DigiFarm, DigiFarm RTK, and then you'll find their coverage map. And just make sure that you're in their coverage map because you have to have two things. You have to have at least one bar of 4G to log in, but your cell signal doesn't have to be that good to maintain the connection. So as long as you have one bar, you're fine. Secondly, you have to be in their area because DigiFarm actually sets up their own network of tower or base stations on the towers. So you have to be within their network. So you have to, we use our hotspot. So we just I hook my phone up to my, hotspot on my, hook my hotspot on my phone up to my T40 remote, T20P remote, and then I can connect to the DigiFarm system. And then, we're good as long as we have, some kind of Wi-Fi signal. Then you pay $900 a year for a subscription to DigiFarm. Okay. So if you don't think you have a reliable signal, then yes, the base station would be a better route because you don't need any cell signal at all for that. Okay, Ben says, I live in Northern California where walnut, almonds, and orchards dominate our area. With your spray drones, what can I offer to these orchards and businesses as a spray drone business? Okay, Ben, well, the key to any application, especially a new application like, offering, a drone application, is you have to know what specific type of application, what type of product works best out of a drone, and what is the pain points, of your potential customer. So in row crop, it's easy because pain points is they, a lot of times in many areas, they can't get air application when they need it. And so air application, that's what a drone does. Perfect, problem solved. With walnuts, almonds, orchards in general, what application would you offer that they couldn't do themselves? That'd be the question. That's kind of the thing that, sometimes drones aren't the best fit for certain applications. I imagine most of these, walnuts, almonds, orchards, they're probably using a blower type machine. They've used these for decades in this industry. We're using, 100-mile-per-hour plus wind coming through a big fan hooked up to a diesel engine. And they're putting out 50 or 100 gallons of water per acre, and they're getting a really good penetration and coverage with these. So what a drone could offer would be site-specific management. So if you knew you had a disease pressure in a certain area, then a drone would be easier to deploy in that area. Secondly, is if the trees are really tall, then some of these blowers can't actually get to the very top of the canopy very well. They can get through the canopy, the middle of the canopy, but getting up to the top of the canopy on tall trees sometimes is not very, doesn't happen very well with a traditional blower type machine, which is where a drone is perfect for hitting the tops of trees, which is where most photosynthesis occurs. There's an argument to be made that protecting the top of the tree, the most valuable part of the tree, is better. But there are orchards, modern orchards are on like trellis style orchards, growing a lot more like grapes, like apple orchards here in Missouri. There's a lot of them switching over to trellis style, high density, where they're growing more vertical, not necessarily horizontal out. And so blowers work just fine for that type of application. You get a lot of off-target application with the drone. We've done some studies, and I'll shut up about this here in a second. But we've done some studies here with some local peach orchards, University of Missouri, and shown that a drone actually did a better job in that situation than the blower did when it came to the end result, the yield and less cold fruit. But that was one specific application where you had peach trees that were spaced out pretty far. So we targeted high concentration application over each peach tree instead of relying on a blower to just blanket the entire orchard. So yeah, I don't have a great answer for you. Talk to these orchards, see what the pain points are. We have had issues with local towns banning aerial application from planes and helicopters due to drift. What are you seeing for drift issues from Joshua? Yes, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about any towns actually banning the use of planes and helicopters, but I can definitely see this happening. There's tons of complaints filed to the FAA every year for this same issue. So do drones have zero drift? Of course not. Do ground rigs have zero drift? Of course not. But drones are going to have more potential drift than a ground rig would have in the same conditions, just because you're applying at a higher altitude. But you can mitigate that. So if you are flying on next to a residential area, then first off, make sure your wind isn't blowing towards their backyards. If it is, then you want to stay away, 100 foot. And then on the 100-foot closest, then you can lower the drone down. You can slow the drone down, reduce your swath width, and slow the drone down. What that's going to do is that's going to put more of your downforce into actually pushing that product straight down, as opposed to creating vortex and pushing it behind the drone. So yes, you can mitigate drift issues with drones by doing that, lowering down, slowing down, and also using DRA, drift reducing adjuvant, helps quite a bit. Charles, I see your hand raised there. I will get to you as soon as I get to the Q&A. I'll put it down, I think, maybe. All right, Adam, you also said, you mentioned earlier helping to file our FAA paperwork, such as 4407 exemption. What other exemptions do you help file? For example, some other drone dealers also offer a no VO exemption for 55 pounds, an exemption for a 500-foot buffer. Okay. Yes. So we file the 137 and 4407. That comes with an exemption to get rid of the 500-foot buffer, because standard under 4407, there is a 500-foot buffer away, where you have to stay 500 foot away from anybody not directly involved in the operation, which could be a road, could be just individuals, bystanders, whatever. So yeah, our exemptions come standard with a safety case that takes that to 50 feet. So that's standard. That's pretty standard across the board now, really, for anybody, I would think, anyways. Okay, as far as the no VO, all right, I would ask them if they have this exemption, if it's been approved, okay? Because people can sell you all sorts of stuff, especially in this industry. People will sell you anything, because it's a burgeoning market, right? And you don't know what you don't know. And so if you buy a VO, no VO exemption or a swarming exemption, then you expect that to be, approved in a timely manner. Problem is, no VO exemptions, swarming exemptions, to my knowledge, none of those have been granted, meaning that, you might get it granted, but it's probably going to take quite a while for it to get granted, because there's no precedence. So yeah, I don't know of anybody who has no VO for 55 pounds. Not yet, anyways. Okay, Todd says, can you customize field entry and exit pass with DJI? Yes, Todd, you can. So your question basically is, can you come in and out of the field at the same point, or at the same 2 points, or whatever? With DJI, what you do here is you set up obstacles. And so obstacles with the DJI system work the same in the field boundary as they do outside of the field boundary. So you can put obstacles anywhere. You can overlap field boundaries. You can do whatever you want with obstacles. And that's a strict no-fly zone in automated mode, essentially. So if there's an obstacle, let's say you have a tree line along one end of the field, and you have a 40-foot gate, opening, you want the drone to fly in and out that one tree line, that one boundary, then you just put a obstacle where the trees are at. no obstacle where no trees are at, and it'll come in and out right then and right there. But the great thing about the DJI system is, on top of being very versatile, it's a hybrid between manual and autonomous, meaning that it operates in autonomous mode whenever you want it to, and you can take over manual control with the sticks without pressing any buttons, without disrupting the operation at all, at any point in time, and you can resume the operation immediately afterwards, right from the same device. And so we've tested out the other drones, and you either cannot do this, or if you do, problems arise. So hope that answers your question, Todd. All right, Derek asks, how long does it take to get the two exemptions, 137 and 447? All right, Derek, good question. So it used to take about a year and a half to get these two exemptions. Now it is significantly less. We're seeing exemptions go through in as little as 4 weeks. But to err on the side of caution, I would say 10 to 12 weeks at the most is when you would expect these. So if you apply for one now, by spray season, you will have it, unless the FAA does something radical. But what they seem to be doing is actually embracing the technology and wanting to speed the process. So yes, anywhere from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks. Okay, using the new DJI range extender in our really up and down fields, it may be hard to find a spot where all areas will see the elevated range extender. Is it better to break the field into smaller segments to keep connection with the controller? What strategies would you employ? Guys, these are phenomenal questions here. Thank you. Okay, so the range extender, if you guys aren't familiar with this, it's called the DJI Relay. It works as basically a mesh network. And they call it a relay because your signal, instead of going from the remote to the drone, goes from the remote to the relay to the drone. And so as long as the remote can see the relay and the relay can see the drone, then you will have connection. This is unique to the DJI system, and it's a really, really important tool to utilize. So there's two ways to do this. Yes, you can put your range extender up on a big 30-foot pole on your trailer, but like you said, sometimes you can't get to all areas of your field or see all areas of your field with that range extender. So breaking up your field into different sections is one way to do that. The other way to do that is we've actually had guys get a different drone. So like we've had guys use the M30 or M30T and strap the range extender to it. And with the range extender on M30T, you've got about a half hour or more of flight time, hover time. They just hover that M30T up in the air, and then it can see the entire field. A bit extreme, but yes, that can be done. I should mention here that for FAA regulation, you need to have line of sight with your drone at all times. But there are ways to operate your drone without line of sight using the range extender, just like we talked about. I've also kind of thought about a weather balloon. A little extreme. I don't know how fast they inflate, but that would be a pretty slick way to do it too. All right. Josh Smith says, our state ducked the issue and left it up to the local towns. Awesome thing. Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, Tim says, can you do all of the field planning on a desktop that you can do on the controller? Sort of. So you can do all of your boundaries and all of your obstacles on a desktop with like Pix4D or DJI Smart Farm Web. Now your routes you cannot plan on a laptop on DJI Smart Farm Web unless you're doing 3D flight routes. But you can plan them on like an iPad using the Smart Farm app. You can plan all of that out on Smart Farm app. Your no spray zones, your obstacles, stuff like that, and then it syncs over. So there you go. Okay, I think that's Q&A. So we will switch over to the chat.
At the very bottom of chat is the most recent.
Bottom of chat's most recent. Okay.
Most of the other ones are pretty much taken care of.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Ben on chat says, I see numerous companies on Instagram trying to sell their services to pass the FAA Part 107 exam. Do I need one of these to pass the exam, or can I do it on my own with information found online? Well, there's plenty of information online about 107. There's YouTube videos, that tell you how to pass it. But a practice exam is a great way to pass the exam, because if you can pass the practice exams, then you can probably pass the real exam. You learn what you don't know then. So my recommendation is either you buy one of these courses that has a practice exam in it, or you can hop on Amazon and find there's some study guides on there, some books on there that have practice exams in them. So that's what I would do. Yes, I would recommend getting one of the practice exams. Okay.
You can scroll through, but I think that's just about all of it.
Okay. Um, all right. Yeah. Asa was asking if, I don't know if you answered this one, if Pix4D is working on a tree counting feature within their software.
Yes, he asked that earlier on. That's one of the ones I typed an answer to, but you
Okay.
can reevaluate on that if you'd like.
Yeah. What was your answer there, Ryan?
So I have been briefly talking with Jay on our side as well as Julian from Pix side, and that's mostly just on the stand count side of things, but I'm sure that kind of has something to do with it. But
Yeah.
they are working on that. They hope to have something by 2025. They're just doing a lot of data gathering right now, so I'm reaching out to Jay, seeing what he can help me out with.
Yeah. Yeah. And Pix4D Fields is mostly geared towards row crop, ASA, not necessarily forestry or anything else. So I don't know how much crossover there would be. There are other softwares that have tree counting features. Um, but in your application, that might be kind of tough.
I did a very brief Google search a while back, and there was one that popped up that's an app or something called like Count It or something like that. And it's a subscription thing, but you basically give it a picture and it will count for you. So that might be something you look into.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. All right. And then Ryan asked on here, in your opinion, should a drone and exemptions be registered as in the individual or LLC, doing my own farm work the first year to get my experience, then maybe getting into commercial work? Yeah, most states anyways, it's very easy to form an LLC. So I would recommend to form an LLC, and register your drone in that LLC and do your FAA exemptions in the LLC as well. Because you never know what the future holds, and it is, liability protection to a certain extent, even if you're doing your own farm. And then Adam here asks, any particular recommendations for a spray rig setup for doing the easements right of ways, as you mentioned, having to do a lot of moving around. So Adam, we got a Can-Am 6x6 side by side. It's got a bit higher payload capacity, and it's got a 6-foot bed on it, so you can put a small tank of water back there, a generator, drone, and your batteries, and you can get in and out of hard to get to places. That works. Get yourself 4x4 half ton would probably be just as good. You can put everything that you need to in the back with a smaller drone like the T20P. So that's what I would recommend doing. I don't know if I would necessarily do a trailer setup, since you might have to get back into some gnarly areas. All right, Kyle says, do you have a rough parts list or diagram available to build uh, and plumb a spray trailer? So Kyle, we have somewhat of a parts list that I have not actually gone through and edited for a while. Um, we built kind of our first trailer, no diagram really. But Ryan, were you working on this?
Yeah, a little bit. One thing that we can do, I think, eventually, once we tidy it up a little, we should do just a video on that trailer in general
Yeah.
and just explain a little bit of everything that's in that, just mostly on the pump side for a simple setup. But we can definitely include a list in there as well, like a written out list.
Yeah. And guys, on plumbing for trailers or spray systems, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. You know, we've done as simple as a cage tank, so 250 gallon IBC tote that you can pick up for free in a lot of places or cheap in a lot of places. Get a pump that mounts directly to it and get a 30-foot hose on that pump, and that's it. And you can use that same pump to recirculate and to fill the drone with. That's as simple as it can be. Then you can also have something very complex that involves, uh, multiple cone bottom tanks, a mixing system like we use, uh, you know, freshwater tanks, different valves. So I don't know if there's any right or wrong answer.
There will be some videos upcoming on some of the kind of builds that we're doing as we get to the end of them as well.
You
So
got
keep
it.
an eye out for that.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we'll keep out for YouTube. All right, David asks, using obstacles to create entry extra points for the drone. While doing this in Terra and adding obstacles, I've noticed that when the drone hits return to home, it wants to fly through what I have marked as obstacles. Any experience with that? Okay, so David, first off, what drone? Second off, if you're doing this in Terra, are you marking those areas what are you marking those areas as in Terra? Or is it like a 3D flight route? Or are you marking them as like a tree or a pole or a building? I know you can, that's how kind of Terra works. Um, I might need some more clarification on how you're actually marking those obstacles. Just type that in, I'll get to you at the bottom. Okay, Josh asks, what does your dealer network look like in the Northeast? We do have several dealers out there in the Northeast. If I don't know if our map is updated online to show you the locations, um, but you can just send an email in or send a request in, um, and we'll try to get you in touch with the closest dealer up there. We are, always looking for new dealers in areas we don't have dealers, but we do want to try to prioritize folks who have experience. Only way to get experience is to get a drone and do application. That's the only way that you can understand how this stuff works. Uh, ortho map. Okay. So David, you said the T40 ortho map marked as either tree or pole, and I just painted the area with Terra and leaving gaps where I intended for the drone to return through. Makes sense? Yeah. Okay, I got this, David. Yeah, so just a regular 2D map, ortho map with Terra. Um, all right, I guess maybe the question I would have for you would be, did those areas on the remote show up as obstacles? Um, they did, I would think it should work the same way. Now, this is actually not something that I've done because we don't typically use Terra for 2D maps. Pretty much only use Terra for 3D flight routes. Um, so yeah, if this has happened to you, um, I can't say that I've had this experience because I haven't actually done this. I've always uh, created obstacles on the remote, or we've done it with Pix4D as well. But Pix4D only works inside the boundary, not outside the boundary. So, uh, okay. And David asks, what are you using to create orthos? So we we're not. Whenever we're creating orthos, and by orthos, if you guys aren't familiar, he's talking about orthomosaic maps. So a lot what you saw there on Pix4D that we showed using like the Mavic or whatever. So the only times that we ever really use ortho maps, David, is if we have to do like some kind of spot spraying, or if we have to do 3D flight routes, create 3D flight routes. Um, Maybe very rarely are we using orthos to actually get to take a picture of an area and create just a normal field boundary. Um, If we do, then typically we just use like Smart Farm Web or Pix4D to and then create a shape file and import that shape file into the T40. And then from there, we do the rest of the editing, putting in the no spray zones, putting in the obstacles and everything. So yeah, hope that helps. Oh, gotcha. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, reach out to us. Let's talk. Okay, and then over here on the Q&A, we've got a couple more questions pop up. From the previous question, if I use DJI Smart Farm with 3D, assume by using RTK, then you can do field flight planning. Yes. So DJI Smart Farm Web, not the app, but Smart Farm Web, or DJI Terra, which is, same thing, only it's on your hard drive, not on the app, not on the web. You can create 3D flight routes and very customized routes just in general using the point cloud, so the 3D point cloud. And then yes, you can create the route right there. Problem is you can't actually edit the route once you get that into your T40 or T20P remote. All the editing is done on Smart Farm Web or on DJI Terra. Okay, I'm assuming this is same right here. Yeah, Christmas tree counting is huge in our area. Yeah, Christmas trees, but that is.
I think that was going back to what he was talking about with his tree counting.
Yep.
That would be really nice to be able to count all those trees.
Yeah.
Fabian also has his hand raised, I believe.
Who does?
Fabian.
Fabian. Oh, here we go. Okay, Fabian, you should be able to unmute now.
Bottom left of your screen should be the unmute button, if you could find it.
Yeah, looks like a microphone, Fabian.
If not, if you hit it on accident, that's fine. We'll toss you off in a sec.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Okay, so David, just more information here. I'm in North Carolina, so our fields are odd shaped with a lot of obstacles. I map all of them via RTK and create the ortho to create our boundaries, if that helps any. That does help. I understand why you do this, David. Yeah, it totally makes sense now. I'm not saying that orthos, are a bad way to create fields. I'm just saying we don't do that typically that often. But yeah, I guess I would try that again with creating boundary or our obstacles on the remote. And then your flight path. So the remote will show you exactly the flight path that the drone is going to take for return to home and for going out to spray. So if your flight path does not show going around those obstacles, then that's a problem. Let us know. Thomas, thanks for joining us. All right, appreciate the good kind words. Thanks, Thomas. Okay, guys, that was it. That was easy. Guys threw up some softballs tonight. Okay. That is it for us tonight. I hope this was beneficial for you guys. Thank you for staying late and joining us. We will put this on YouTube so you can review this later. And I think maybe we're putting this onto a podcast series as well. And of course, if you have any more questions, then please feel free to reach out to us and let us know. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.